we should be live. How we doing? Any? Can we get just confirm the chat is working? Let's confirm the chat is working now. Can we get someone to type in maybe just to confirm? Should be, but no replay on the audio tonight too, which is good. Yeah, we back, ladies and gentlemen. Not a ton in our stream last night. Let me just. Okay. All right, let's get cooking here. Let's get cooking. I do have the chat open on Twitter and on YouTube or X, whatever you want to call it. So just go away and chat as you please. But let's get started here. And so here is our. So let's get started with Thursday, Friday. So we have our system currently. Let's get here just to help explain things better, just for the short term. This is where we're at right now, right? So this is 12 o'clock right here is our low pressure system right here. And right, so we just had our second transfer happen. First transfer, sorry. Our first transfer just happened earlier, and our second transfer is just getting going right now with our low pressure system. And as we progress, we'll see this line of rain and possibly some thunder move through. And as we see that happen, we'll then see a little bit maybe of a battle between low pressure systems. We'll see, I think, GFS going a little bit too much on the outer in the beginning here. But as we see this progress, then we start to see this low pressure take over, right? This will be our third period of intensification for our surface low, right? Our third surface low to intensify. And as we start to progress, don't worry too much about where exactly the p-type map is showing. It's just a good demonstration, and that will start to bottom out. And then as we progress, then we start to see that fourth round of intensification happen, right? That fourth period of intensification for the surface low. And at that point, that's more of a central to northern New England show. But there's a caveat with that we're going to dive into. So let's look at it from 500, which, that's where I like to do things from. So here it is at 500, right? It's still pretty broad trough, broad energy consolidation. But what we're going to see happen is, right, as we start this transfer that's happening, slowly happening tonight, and we consolidate our energy at 500. Again, we mentioned we're going to stack at 5, 7, and 850. And as we do that, it really is going to turn into where does the upper level low go? And from there, it's going to make it pretty easy then to identify who's going to be getting snow, because really it's just who's wrapped around, who's on the wraparound of this upper level energy here, and that's where the most snow is going to get. So it seems like models have kind of condensed here, besides the NAM, just to get some a little bit higher resolution. I think somewhere between the NAM and the GFS for now is like a good in between, where we can get a sense of like, the NAM will over amplify each and every low that it takes with it. But the GFS will also underdo it. So it's a little bit of a contrast. So I kind of like, I like the contrast between the both of them in a middle ground just for now, but there's going to be so many surprise. I'm telling you guys, this is like, it's a really unique system, and there's still a lot that's yet to occur. In terms of surprises. And I'm telling you, I tweeted out earlier that if this were mid-January, I think this would be a lot more of a headache to forecast in terms of margins for temperatures. But let's slide it back here to, right, and so here's one thing we've seen this piece back off. If this were, stronger originally, that's where we would see probably this low take off a little bit more, and we'd see probably more cold air injected. So we probably see more presence, more stronger presence of cold air, because this, right, this is cold air coming from the backside. It's not like deep Arctic, cold air. It's not amazingly, powerful, but what it does do is it ends up being a part of that, that neck system, right? You see how it gets entangled here, and then the NAM really takes off with this one on this run, and it really took off with that fourth period of intensification. But then the GFS, which I think this was, I don't think this was anywhere near accurate. It kind of just really gets sheared off and really struggles to take off. I think this was kind of just a wash of a run with the GFS, as it really kind of, Fujiwara is almost the upper level low around the system. So I think that wasn't necessarily the most accurate depiction of the GFS. That's why I like a good middle ground between those two. And then if we take a look at the euro, right, it's kind of an in between those two, right? You're kind of, um, it does take off, kind of shears off, I think, a little bit more with that third transfer that happens in that fourth round of intensification. It kind of holds on to the second transfer, holds on to that a little longer, which is also possible, is as opposed to this, taking over. So there's just so many different possible scenarios that could still really happen with this. And so it's why I'm really not like getting too, too like highly, drawn into one scenario when it comes to this storm, because I mean, it's really going to come down to, again, in the beginning, where does that upper level low track? And that's going to define really, who gets into the most snow. That western, that western tip and that southern edge of that upper level low. I think the thermals here on tidbits are kind of garbage, so it's a little bit hard to tell. Let's see if we can get here to pivotal, just slow in general, but on an even slower laptop, or sorry, PC. This is not my original setup, so if the sound does, cut out at times or more than usual than it was before, just kind of bear with me. Because this is not my traditional setup. As I mentioned, I'll be getting it back soon, but for the meantime, this is kind of what I'm working with. So let's see if we can get here to 18Z euro. Then also, for those that are curious about this storm, I forgot, I'm not paying for pivotal. So but yeah, I will be also breaking down potential storm signal for next week, and then also just the pattern in general. So if you want to stay tuned, that's kind of what we're going to be going over. I think the NAM thermals do a little bit better of a job. So, I think it really, this sounds cliche, but a good comparison of a good mix up of all three of the models right now, I think I think they're doing a really good job, because it highlights all the different scenarios. That's why I think models, I'm really liking where the models are at in terms of highlighting all the different possible scenarios, which is good. It means they're on the table. The scenarios that, I'm looking at and seeing possible are all, apparent, right? So this is the NAM scenario where really we quickly see the transfer take place here, and then this surface low kind of backs in, and you stack 700 again and right offshore. So then all of, you get basically banding that goes all the way down from northern to southern New England, and then you mix in some snowflakes there, possibly some accumulation in this scenario as well, because it's going to be Saturday morning, peak cold time frame. Temperatures are the lowest, and you can see some snow mixes into southern New England here. So like there's still an array of different scenarios, I think, still yet to take place with this. And that's why, like, I'm really not holding on too strongly to any one specific scenario for right now, because it's an extremely difficult storm to forecast. And I mentioned it, the reason it's not being talked about more is simply just because it's raining for the most populated areas, like New York City, Hartford, Providence, and Boston, right? So the most populated Philly as well. The most populated areas are going to be rain. Now I think there's a shot maybe New York City could get a few flakes on the back end at some point. If not around the area just to the north, lower Hudson Valley, it's possible. I think the NAM thermals are better. We can look at the HRR. I think it's testing it a little bit too much, in my opinion, to be going this far for the HRR. But and take a look. It will do good with the thermals. It'll do really good, and it kind of highlights really anywhere on that southern and western side of the is going to be in it besides lower elevations, and then from there it's trying to figure out. I think it's way too messy with we're really testing it when we go this far, and it's got 3 different areas of convective. It'd probably be more like 2. This would probably be more centered in between if I had to guess, but again, that's just breaking down the run itself. Again, for anybody that is in here, I just want to make sure either comment on the Twitter post or make sure you can chat on live. Like I get it, there's not a ton of people in here right now, but just I would like to confirm that like you can chat, and if not, I need to figure out why it's not working, because in theory, my producer studio suggests that you guys can chat, but notice how it says ended as well. So I don't like that. So let me know. Let me know if you guys can or not. I would like to know about that, and I'll check during the stream. I don't like that you guys. If it's not working on Twitter, you can always go to YouTube and chat there. But we can figure that out. So yeah, so there's still a lot of different scenarios with this storm, and I think it's really important to highlight all of them. Timing wise, when we look at this upcoming storm, we see rain tonight into tomorrow, and then tomorrow night, tomorrow evening, I think is like peak time frame, did I get that right? Yeah, tomorrow night we start to see, at midday tomorrow, even potentially into tomorrow night is when we start to see a transition. Oh, okay, I can see chat. Let's go. Is when we start to see that transition start to take place. So, what up, John? How are we doing, my guy? Thank you for chatting to make sure I could see it. That was important for me. So now I know you guys can't chat. That's all I care about. Again, I'm not too important, but just want to make sure you guys have the ability to. So yeah, so this is really, if you guys have any questions about this specific storm, just relay them. But we did cover a lot of this last night as well. So for the we covered, from a broad synopsis, but we can break it down again, just in general, things I do like about this storm. Let's see, what did I bring up? We take a look at the moisture tail here. It is pretty significant. I guess we can just do this from this picture as well. Otsego County, New York. On YouTube, American weather. What is? I feel like I know where I've seen it before. Vaguely familiar. I studied all my New York counties not too long ago. I kind of forgot them, but yeah, I think that's near PA, northern New York border, right? Did I get that right? Otsego County, or is that that's either like somewhere in here or up here? I forget. But yeah, let's see. Let's go to. Crap, what was I gonna go to? Oh yeah. Show the moisture feed. So when we look at here, here we go. So when we look at the moisture feed here, we're gonna go to North Atlantic. Let's go. So when we look at the moisture, I mean, look at this. So when this low does take off, I think the GFS is even handling like this one a little crazy. Like, see how it like kicks out, you know, like I don't think it's gonna kick out too much like that. Wrap. It will probably wrap pretty tight to it. Okay, yeah, I was right. It's around Binghamton, yeah. Yeah, I'll talk about that. I'll talk about that in a second. So with this moisture feed, I think it's impressive still, right? Notice how it's not like really well put together in this area. Like it's not a complete fire hose like I'm talking about, but you can connect the moisture tail across the Pacific through the Caribbean and through all the way up here. And notice it's in, right? So when we look at the basics of a storm, right, and look at this. I mean, this stands holy and 936 millibar. I mean, that's a freaking beast of a storm up there in the North Atlantic. My goodness. Wow. But yeah. So when we look at this, what gets me intrigued about this, like this fourth period of intensification, this third transfer, is we'll have some cold air, just a little bit kicking in from the backside, and then we have this strong moisture. I guess it's not strong, but we have this long moisture tail. We have a nine. You know, if we're getting to 967, that's going to be incredible. I don't know if we're going to get that strong, but we're going to get pretty strong. We're going to get into the 970s on that period of intensification. You can see it in the euro as well. Point this out, right? We're going to get into the 970s. So we're going to get pretty strong with this system, and we're going to back the flow completely, right? We're doing it with the third low, so it's kind of an in-trough situation if we kick it back here. It's kind of an IVT situation where we have two different low pressure systems that are going to battle against each other, and we're going negative, and we're back in the flow. So the isobars are pull off each other, and our moisture flow is all the way from around back here, right? So it's not super tight. We do have, have some moisture flow from back here off the Atlantic, but right, this next round of intensification, if we slide here to regions. If we slide regions and then we go Eastern US, just so I can see a little bit more, as the next low starts to take off, right? The euro is one that holds on to our second transfer, holds on to it pretty well, but you can see our moisture flow here off the Atlantic, wrapping completely around, right? So we have just a lot of different, segments in terms of where our moisture is coming from in this storm. And so what's going to happen is as our trough goes negative, right, we're going to back the flow off the Atlantic, and with cold air, rushing in from the backside, that's going to meet up. We're going to get a pretty good gradient, if I had to guess, with good moisture. So I think for those that do get into the snow to overperform as well. I think there's definitely going to be some double digits out of here. In terms of snowfall, I'm not going to put out a snowfall map. I would have to download Photoshop and set it all up, and we're just not there at the moment. But I really do know. I want it in front of Genesis Dynamics. There we go. But you can see the millibar temperatures crash there, and where's that period? Where FGen at? Boom, right? And we can see our period of FGen here, right? So our best dynamics are going to be centered around in this area. So the best shot for heavy snowfall is really going to be just follow the upper level low, right? That thing is going to be, and so we go to the back side here. We'll go to 700, right? So we have snow around here in Catskills, central New York, into a lot of central and eastern Pennsylvania as well, especially elevated places in northeastern PA. I think a spot for this one. Poconos could be a real money spot with this one, like a real good money spot. So I would keep an eye on some of those locations. I think they'll do fantastic. I also think Catskills is another place that will do pretty well. And then even notice northwest flow down here onto the mountains. That's pretty good. They'll get some good snowfall. Anybody that's got family or is living down there. So yeah, so that is going to be that's going to be. I think this is going to have potential to surprise because I mean, look at this. We had this round, right? So I mean, just in general, look at the convective tail on this system. Real good convective tail. Going to be we're backing the flow right into where our cold air, our warm air, and remember, it's about two gradients are so important. Gradients are super important. Anybody that's taken uh, meteorology classes before learn about this some, but you know, gradients are incredibly important. Where you have to be able, you know, the stronger and the tighter the gradient in terms of temperature, the more, you know, dynamic you can make the atmosphere. So let's just take a sounding here. See if we can find something kind of gnarly here. Let's see if we can find something exciting. There we go. On the Hudson Valley here. So we're not super cold aloft. We're not super cold aloft, but we're cold. We're cold, right? We're plenty cold. This is a snow sounding all day. Not great lift actually in the dendritic zone here, right? We don't have great great mid-level dynamics, but we're pretty well saturated for the most part, and we're pretty well saturated all the way up from here in the atmosphere, all the way from about 400 millibars down to the surface. We're pretty well saturated. We're actually a little bit in the dendritic zone, just a little bit, so maybe a little dry there. But we do notice we stay cold all the way through, you know, typically minus 20, you know, to minus 10 is where you look at the dendritic growth zone. And if you notice that, we're starting that right about, where that minus 20, we're starting right about, you know, 520. So that's really not too bad. This is an elevated place, as you can see too, because we're sitting, you know, 970 millibar, somewhere around there. Yeah, I will look at the GFS on. I will look at 500 millibars on the G. We're gonna dive into the future. We're gonna dive into next week and what's after that, just after that. So don't you worry about that. And so when we look at the pattern, we'll dive into that. But here, notice like this is actually pretty good. You know, we don't have crazy upper level. Notice we don't have a cold upper level air mass. But notice, you know, you know, notice once we get here closer to our mid levels, as we start getting to 700 millibars, we still stay pretty cold. As our dendritic growth zones from about, you know, 525 to about you know, about 725. So that's a pretty good. That's not bad. You know, typically you look at 500 to 600 millibars. You know, is like to an average. So this would be decent snow growth too. Even though at the surface we start to warm, right? Even though at you know, once we get to 850, we start getting to about, you know, minus 3 or 4 degrees Celsius. You know, typically minus 5 or lower. Around 850 is a good, you know, just average benchmark when we're looking at soundings. So it is very much you know, elevation dependent in terms of, especially for ratios. You know, as we see backside, you know, some of that snow that I want to take another one out of here. Let's see if we can find, let's find if it's elevation. Here's some pretty good dynamics, but here's another example, right? We get dynamic cooling under these heavy bands take place, right? This one's a little closer to the surface here at 35 degrees. This is almost 1,000 millibars. So some elevation, but not a ridiculous amount. Probably something closer to 1,000 feet if I had to guess off the top of the head. But this is when we look at this, right? Still same amount, you know, of upper level cold. But when we start our dendritic growth zone, you know, we're even still about the same, about 525. 10 though, we're a little bit lower. Notice we're about 650 millibars. And notice all the way down here, and at 850, or maybe -1, -2, and all the way down here, this is all, you know, it's close, probably really wet snow, because, you know, we're about 0 starting at, you know, 925 for a little while down to the surface. So this is dynamic cooling taking over, and some of those heavy snowfall rates, you know, cooling the column. Those colder temperatures are being brought down with heavier precipitation, from the top of the column, just to, so these cooler temperatures are helping cool the column and making sure that this doesn't go over too early and it's rain instead of snow. That's, is what dynamic cooling is, as we've talked about, many times before. So this event is really going to come down to really tight, thin margins, and that's why I think this could be a real surprise event for a lot of people, right? The M3K is a bit in the 12K in terms of the bringing that low through. It's kind of similar, right? It kind of details it, but it kind of gets it doesn't consolidate our temperatures as well here, and it kind of loses a little bit more, run some of this out. That's something that 12 does. So it's another similar run, but you notice, right, elevation, you get some snow coming in here into Western Mass, Central Mass, and into New Hampshire, and then eventually Maine, where some of those good dynamics we'll get to eventually. So I really think there's an opportunity for places in here to potentially overperform. I didn't draw that great. For places in there to overperform potentially for snowfall, and then there's places in a higher end scenario where we could see accumulating snowfall in here. Down here in the central and western Mass and northern Connecticut as well. I think there's an opportunity for some places to overperform, especially if you have elevation. Once we see that third transfer take place, I think that's where we start to see the potential for more than just flakes potentially. I think a lot get their first flakes of the season at some point. You'll mix over, or maybe your mix of rain and snow, and then see. But I think it's going to be a pretty good event for a lot of PA in New York. Almost all of PA, I would really say, and then central New York, into some places in the Finger Lakes, especially just southeast with elevation, and then east as we go into the Hudson Valley, and then central, and then even up here in the northern New York. A lot of upstate New York is going to pull out, pretty well. So I think there's opportunity, for people, maybe you're forecasted 1-3, you could end up with more, like 4-8 potentially, right? I'm struggling to see, how we can look at, some of those those 2 feet plus totals that some of those models were hinting at a couple of days ago. I kind of figured that was just model noise in general, but when we look at total QPF here, why is that not available? Shouldn't it? Total precipitation, it's fine. We can go to GFS for that. Where does would the 12K have it? Yeah. Okay. We look at total precip here. Not all of this is snow, remember, but still, I mean, we're throwing out 1 to 2 inches plus, of QPF. So for when you do have a chance to change over, it is gonna be there's gonna be the opportunity for a good amount of snow. So especially, right here, this is where the most QPF is in some of in the centered forecast for where snow is likely going to be. I mean, you could easily pick up 8 to 12 plus inches of snow in some of these areas, maybe more. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if some of these higher elevation areas could pull out 1.5 feet of snow, because you're just going to be, remember, you're back in the flow and you're getting moderate to heavy snowfall for a long time. I mean, it's a really good setup, just to get dumped on. I don't think we're going to be dealing with, in crazy good dynamics with 3 to 5 inch per hour rates. There's been nothing to suggest that, but maybe some 1 to 3 inch per hour, 1 to 2, consistent 1 to 2 inch per hour rates for a good amount of time, and that's how you stack up snowfall. So I do like. Again, this is kind of just I like this depiction, just this radar shot here. Look at the section of northern New York, and right, notice where snowfall is centered. It's all in the western and southern half, as we do kind of a loop-de-loop here with the surface low. And then as that starts to take off, then we'll see, we'll start to see, I think you can see the convective feedback problems here. It's kind of a mess. I think this probably consolidates a little bit closer. Realistically, maybe not as strong too, but kind of just see the jumpiness here. What was that? Yeah, I mean, that's still a ridiculous game. For 6 hours, 11 millibars would be incredible. So we'll see how that plays out. But let's see, what was my Otsego County, New York. Yeah, I mean, it looks like a good. We'll take a. What are we about here? Probably. Still pretty good sounding to me. I think your time frame there is going to be tomorrow night. I think that's your best. I think that's your best bet for the best amount of snow. I think tomorrow PM, tomorrow night, sundown, best temperatures. That's where you accumulate the most. Probably somewhere around here. Let's take a look. It's pretty decent right there. Some elevation, a little bit of elevation, and decently well saturated. Got some decent dynamics to work with too. About 0.6, 0.7 omega maybe. 0.5, whatever. I mean, probably at least a half foot of snow at a minimum. I'd say, right? Probably 8-to-1 ratios, 8 to 10 to 1 ratios for a lot of the storm. And if you're able to get, if you're able to get like a 12 inches of 10-to-1 QPF, whatever, and do the math at 8-to-1, you should be able to get, at least a good 8 to 12 inches of snow, 8 to 10 inches of snow there. So I like the prospects for where you are. Otsego County should be a great place to get at least a half foot of snow there. I would say like 6 to 12 there. You can really look on any of them. It's a place that gets pretty well pounded. So, all right. Anybody else got questions about this? We're gonna dive into a long range pattern here. We're gonna dive into long range here. Northeastern PA. I got a good amount of people there. I would say at least 3 to 6 inches of snow for even some non-elevated places there. I think that's a good spot to get a lot of snow too, because you're going to get it right overnight. See, like overnight, like and Saturday, Friday morning is when you're really going to peak. And I don't know if your dynamics and your moisture will be as good, but you will still have decent dynamics, right? I don't know if it'll be the peak, but you'll still make out, I think, pretty well. Because notice we're even a little bit, colder here too at this point, right? We're about 550 or dendritic growth zone, right? So we're colder in our mid levels. This is when we're going to be about coldest in our mid levels in terms of when we're looking at the third round of intensification for this storm, with the surface low. So that's why I think we look at this area here. This could be a real good hotspot for a lot of 3 to 6, 5 to 8, 6 to 12 plus, in this area, especially if you have elevation too. This place does not have as much elevation, it has a little bit, but 33 degrees at the surface, well saturated through. I mean, this is a classic heavy snow sounding here for northeastern PA. Right? Those are good 1 inch per hour rates right there. As you dump, I mean, you just really, it's going to be who's closest to the low pressure, and that's another great sounding there on the border. Beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, were you kidding me? Look at this. That is -2 too. We're -2 omega. Where are we at here? 560, just about 550, 560, all the way down to 750 here, our dendritic growth zone, right? The lower in the atmosphere our dendritic growth zone is, the colder we are in the mid levels. The colder we are in the mid levels, the higher the snowfall rates we get, right? So that's, and assuming we're saturated, which we are through our dendritic growth zone, our column is saturated, meaning we're saturated, meaning by that we're saturated and also colder in our mid-levels. That allows for higher snowfall rates, even if we're 34 degrees at the surface. And at 850, we're kind of trembling a little close, maybe, even if we're getting close. But you can see dynamic cooling take over as well. Even though we're probably still going to be snow, you can see how we're going close and we kind of run right back here. And we kind of cool down at around 9. There's a little around 900 millibars there, so it's kind of neat. So this is a good heavy snow sounding here. This was, probably 1 to 2 inches per hour at this point. If we're just looking at this verbatim, so there's some pretty good it's pretty suggestive that we're going to see a good period of heavy snow across northeastern PA and central New York. Take another look, just HRR, just to get another sounding for perspective. Again, it also, when you're right over the surface low, you're not going to be snowing probably. So that's why it's going to be south and west of the surface low in this scenario. And again, this is really good too as well. I mean, 575 down to 7, and we're actually in 852. We're probably about -4 right there, probably somewhere about that, -5 almost, probably about -4. So that that's a really good snow sounding by the PA New York border. So I think there's a good opportunity for someone to overperform in here that really just gets into the best banding. Whoever gets in the best banding Thursday night, Friday morning is going to be able to get double digits snowfall totals out of this. Maybe a heavy wet snow. The only thing that could work against this, again, we have thin margins here. So if our let's pull up another sounding here. This is probably when mid-levels are coldest, probably right around here. Yeah, I mean, this is solid. But let's say we're working like here and here, like add a couple degrees, and those ratios go down. Right, those snow ratios go down. So that's kind of how we kind of mess with this a little bit when we start playing around with the atmosphere. Imagine like a video game kind of when we take control of it. The things we would do if we had control of it, like a video game, we would do a lot of fun stuff, I'm sure, with it. But if we start playing around with some of the margins, that's where it can get a little bit tricky. And especially we go back. Let's look at the margins for 3K. Let's take a look at the margins in southern New England. And we're going to go to talk about the next week storm and the pattern after this. Just take a look at some of the margins here. This is elevation. This is Worcester Hills here. But these margins are slim, man, right? The mid-level cold is decent, all right? We're dendritic growth zone 550 down to 725. That's we're decent cold at the mid. It's decent, right? It's not great. It's not unbelievable, but it's decent. We're not super well saturated there either, but we start to see we just continue to keep creeping, and we creep again, and these margins get so close here, and it really comes down to if you're in heavy enough snow, dynamic cooling, then you can get half inch per hour snowfall rates, maybe, right? Maybe it's probably more half inch per hour because it's going to be super heavy wet. Right, and these are more like 6 to 8 to 1 ratios instead. So your margins get so slim. But if you're a little bit colder, just a little bit, let's say we're able to wrap in a little bit more cold air from the back, just a little bit, tap it into it, and we pull this closer, and our best dynamics are more consolidated, allowing us to cool the column a little bit better. That could allow for potentially more people to get into the snow back here, further south, and also heavier rates for those elevated areas. So that's kind of the difference with that right there. So again, thin margins with this storm, super thin margins for many people in the interior. In the coast, not so much. The margins are less thin, likely just all rain. So that's why, again, it's not talked about as much because the margins aren't as thin for potential snow there. That's why you're hearing a lot of local meteorologists not talk about it as much for highly populated areas. Like as opposed to Albany, Binghamton, Rochester, and and some of those eastern PA markets, right? So that's kind of the difference. And then, central PA should be able to work into some snow too. Those lower valleys will have trouble with ratios, even if you do stay all snow. But then the low pressure works on top of you. I'd be really surprised, honestly, if this is even accumulating snow at all. So when the low pressure is on top of you, even as we're transferring to, I really don't think that mid to late November, this is probably not accumulating snow whatsoever. So that's probably just flakes flying, if it's even hitting the ground. Well, we're pretty well saturated, so most flakes will hit the ground. Well, yeah. Any more questions, throw them in there, and I'll answer them. But yeah, let's talk about going forward. I think there's a lot of talk about next week already. People are anxious for winter. Can't blame them. But it's not a set in stone for like Black Friday specifically. It's just not set in stone. And we'll use the 18Z as an example. We'll go back to 18Z when we're looking at this storm. All right, this was a solid hit. Real good cold air in the backside. We have a real nice dip in the trough here, all the way down to down into the southern U.S. And we have our good 500 millibar setup. Kind of still a little bit. It's a little bit of a progressive flow as the trough turns about neutral as the action happens, but still it's a pretty good hit. But let's back it up and let's go to 500. I also want to pull up just to reinvigorate some thoughts about what I think is going to happen. Shout out Billy for coming back today. Okay. All right. Yeah. I just wanted to re-inspire some thoughts here. So if we go to North America, let's go to North America. That's where we are, right? I think North America. So here's, again, look at the basics. We can talk about this, like kind of the storm signal, and we'll transfer that to the basic pattern next week. 50-50 low setup, Alaska blob, western based Greenland high. All right, that's kind of the basics of the setup. Low, we're tapping into the polar vortex. All right, so that's kind of the opening here. Cross polar flow as well present. So it's the basics. It's a great setup on paper. Just a great setup for this time frame. I really couldn't ask for it to look much better, right? And we weren't going to see drastic changes, right? It looks so drastic on the P-type map because people get obsessed with that. I'd argue everything but the placement of the frickin' placement of the Alaska blob. This just dropped more, so allowing it to force this farther west and really force more of a just kind of track. Right, we're forcing more cold air down, pushing down on our system more, so we're suppressing it. That was the difference between that run and that run. This is still 200 hours out, right? I think people forget this is fantasy land almost. Still, it's not, because we have a consistent signal, but it's kind of. We can even ensemble this MF for next. That's what we're going to do. And as we progress, right? Even if this were the setup, I would love. This is a golden setup. If we were just in this time frame, I would love for this to stay, right? Because there's wiggle room here. This could back off more, and this could move back and forth, waffle as well, right? It's really those two pieces guiding, in terms of allowing more or less, cold air to come and suppress down, or the location of our high pressure up there as well, right? There's still some moving pieces, but still 50-50 low setup, right? That's our 50-50 low setup. So, and it's right, there's multiple, as as we like work down here, there's multiple rounds, and I think that's the one that Mr. Mr. American Weather on in the YouTube chat was talking about. I'm guessing it's this one right here in the long range. So it's a chain reaction pattern. We often see this in the wintertime. It's quite common when we get polar vortex stretches or just certain pattern setups, where we have our the wave. Each wave propagates off the polar vortex that comes down. Right here's our polar vortex. It's kind of a multi-part stretch. Right, this is a lobe and then another lobe, right? You see 513 millibars down here. And this is all, even without this is still probably cold air too. Cold enough to snow, right? But this is just, this piece is just, jeez, it's the heater, sorry. It scared the living crap out of me. So that piece kicks in as well, right? And just is bonus really. It sets up a good setup. Yeah. So as we move, right, there's different opportunities. If we just go to 500, right, don't get too caught up. But there's different opportunities. So if one is too progressive, right, this is why I think it's in general it's like the 29th to like the 2nd almost. Like it's that kind of time frame. It could be two different opportunities. It would be hard to get both to hit. If we see large scale some changes in terms of where the energy and the location and the timing, how it moves in, then that's possible. But it is possible to get two hits here. I would lean against it. I would say, and you could miss both. You could miss both potentially too, where one is way too progressive and the next one gets so amplified that you miss both, because we don't have super strong blocking in place. We do have blocking, not super strong though. We could kind of push forward here. So that's why I like this. I almost like the 0Z run better this far out, because I would like to see a lot of suppression, depression, almost borderline, because that then is going to allow for room to come northwest, and likely energy consolidation is likely, all kinds of messed up this far out. So as we progress, but notice one off the other, the next one's progressive and the next one is very amplified, right? So this one little bit progressive, the next wave that comes is more amplified, right? And that means the one behind it is probably going to be it's going to be progressive as well. All right, we're pretty flat here. If we continue to play the game out, that means the one after that, even a freaking tropical cyclone on December 6th on that run. So that's impressive. But so we'll see what happens, right? We'll see what happens. But I'm heavily intrigued, just because when we get this far out, we're still like 200 something freaking hours out when we're this far. Yeah, we'll show the euro, bloody. I'm super excited. Yeah, we'll show the euro for this too. But the setup itself is really just the same. All right. Oh, hold up. I gotta show you guys the P-type map for that, right? We can't go without not showing that. I'm sure there's a, right, progressive. Next one's amplified. Dang, right? This is the stuff you guys want to see. I know. Boom, shakalaka. Right, and if you could almost, I mean, like it's thin margins, but there's going to be two opportunities here. I'm telling you, right? So it's like the 29th to the 2nd. That's where I'm looking at. It's going to be two different opportunities, likely, bearing some drastic changes in the large scale pattern. That is where we're going to see that is where we're going to see multiple opportunities, right? Look at this. I mean, we can tail it back to the Pacific here. Boom. There's where our energy is. And then at this point, all you're missing is just the timing. If this piece comes sooner, you get big boy snowstorm. right? Comes in sooner, you get big boy Snowstorm. And if not, then that means this amplifies. Right? This was really almost, this trough setup would be likely no bueno. This is convective feedback out here. That's where you would look for the upper level. This would be an interior setup if it were just like off based off that. But if we amplify the other one a little bit more and we de-amplify the wave behind it, right? So this is what I'm talking about. When you look at the different waves and how they come off of each other, we have our cross-polar flow. So we're going to have systems moving off the western US and systems moving from the polar vortex up here. So we have two pieces of energy. We're going to be looking at constant phases, likely with this. This is going to be phase central, where we have one wave coming off the other. So here's this one, and then you have the one that comes in behind it. Amplify this more, you de-amplify this more. This is why it's a game of dominoes. This is why this pattern is 100% a game of dominoes. There's a chain reaction for every equal action, whatever the Newton's law is. That's not really true, but for this, but it's just, I'm just pointing it out. All right, we can take a look at the Canadian. Canadian doesn't do super well in the long range. It does well in like the medium long range. 4 to 6 days is kind of that sweet spot. It really struggles in this part, but yeah, you can see it's there. It's just with different. All right, and then it has the one behind it as well. All right, it's there. It's there for both on the Canadian. And then the euro. All right, go back to 12Z. Right, euro bomb. Everybody loves a good euro bomb. So let's cut it here. 12Z. Right, we get a wave rolling through that. I'm curious about that. Does the GFS have that too? Yeah, it's a little different. Maybe a clipper system, or maybe something to watch too. On the 26th, 27th, Euro's pretty consistent on that, so maybe something to watch there. 5-6 days down the road. That wouldn't be necessarily like any big event. I don't think, just based on looking at 500, but then you come in behind it and you just have a pretty strong, you actually don't even get too much of it. You get a little bit of a phase to go on here. More of a single piece of energy kind of system. And you get some cold air here on the backside. You just have a strong upper level low that gets kind of elongated, but for the most part is actually centered offshore. And the 700 was amazing. The 700 on this run, if we're just looking at it verbatim, I mean, it was incredible. I mean, that was a great 700 millibar look. It just so like energy is so wrapped up into everything. Double closed off at 7. Just boom, shakalaka. Big old band there. So a beautiful run, right? We're just looking at verbatim. And then after, notice that's a little bit more amplified than the GFS. The wave after, look how much more progressive it is, right? So, and then the one that comes in after is, amplified more. So that's the pattern we're working with here, right? So the one wave after the other, some more progressive than the one more progressive, the next more amplified, right? So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to identify which one is a hit, which one is a miss. Next week is not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. It's just closer, and there's a pretty strong signal look. It has a good look. So that's what keeps me very, very intrigued. More intrigued about that than really anything else. Go here. Right, beautiful. Still got your 50-50, much more, kind of a little bit of a transient ridging present here, but blocking all across here. Alaska blob. I wasn't a very scientific way of saying everything, but who cares? And then notice it kind of gets broken up. And yours is a little bit different with polar vortex. Kind of drops everything down in here. You have less blocking here, making it a little bit more difficult in the longer range versus I haven't seen 0Z GFS for this time frame, but it's different, right? Keep your ridge here. This is a beautiful, this is a beautiful setup right there for that storm. That's why the GF hits on that one. It's really going to see, I wonder, something to watch too. If we can hold our ridging here, if models are underdoing for how long that stays around, even if you struggle to get access to the polar vortex, which you don't on this run, you can see it propagate down and you're getting direct access to real good Arctic air on that, real good. So even if you do, so you don't, right? You notice that comes down and boom. And if you don't go full on southeast crazy ridge here, this ends up being a hit as well. You have great placement. GFS and Euro are completely different in the long run. These are operational runs as well. So if you're able to hold your ridging here, and this is able to stay, our ridge is able to hold firm and really strengthens, right? Real strong. Talking of, what was that, 588, 585? 585 ridge, real strong. And then 492, right? Look at the contrast. Your gradient is just really tight gradient even here at 500 millibars, which is supportive to get an absolute monster of a storm, regardless of where it goes. So there's an opportunity. Again, I phrased it as this upcoming pattern here in December. We're getting a little bit more into longer range here. We're kind of see how we tied everything in a little bit. This longer range pattern here, when we start diving into everything, it's super intriguing. I referred to it as, imagine you're a playoff team, your favorite playoff team's in the hunt, and it's kind of been like, all year. I don't know if they're going to do it. Sometimes they look good, sometimes they look bad. There's some pieces in place, but there's some things that could go wrong. You don't have everything going for you. Maybe some guys hurt, right? But you're like, they could still go on a run, right? Like a wild card team in baseball, for example, or in football. It doesn't matter, right? A wild card team that kind of just gets in and then goes on a run, right? There's an opportunity for this pattern. It would be a super high ceiling, but there is an opportunity for this to be really well maximized, like for potential for like 2 to 3 snowstorms, even after this one that's coming tomorrow, Friday. There you could get 2 to 3 snowstorms potentially, and depending on how long it lingers, some models really want to hit longer. Others want to, go back to a stronger. You can see the polar vortex, rebounds here, and then maybe this ridging, builds and potentially makes it difficult to get access to the polar vortex again. But if you keep strong ridging here, you might just keep getting real small stretching events to occur from the polar vortex, and you have direct access to Arctic air for any storm that comes on. And then from here now, you're just figuring out how strong is our southeast ridge. That's really it. If you can get a medium, and then also, right here, you don't have any blocking here, right? You don't have much blocking. So here you would need a quieter southeast ridge without strong blocking. So this is why it really is going to come down to mid and high latitude blocking, ridge placement, NAO, southeast ridge. I think this is what the pieces of the longer range are going to come down to, because that's why there's a high ceiling for how this plays out. All right, I'm super intrigued by how this plays out. This is the best pattern for late November, early December since 2019, probably. Let's say that confidently, very confident. And it's not it's not a guaranteed pattern, but it's good enough. Damn. I mean, look at that. I mean, are you kidding me? Freaking December 2nd. That's gorgeous. Even better from the last run too. You freaking kidding me? Alaska Blob Ridge, Sun Greenland blocking, zonal troughing across the mid latitudes with a very limited southeast ridge. Your 588 is down here and not up here. That's a damn good. I mean, the ensembles have continued to even look better than the operationals on a lot of runs consistently. We can reverse this out. It's improved. I mean, this stuff's improved over the past couple days. Take a look. That's sexy. Can do it here too. See what the euro had today. Bang. All right, that's for the first one. That's the 30th, the 29th, 30th, right? A little bit, holds back a little bit more. Let's see. Block, ridge, trough, 50-50. It's just widespread consistency across all the models. And that's really, that's what you want to see for a signal. So I continue to be pretty intrigued and optimistic, not out of fun, but out of literal, based off what models are showing. And then we keep going down. More stronger ridging here, which I don't prefer, but block and ridge present. So you have the pieces there. You just need to move them around a little bit. But even then, this is right here. This is closer to a hit. I don't like this being so strong, but I like this. And I like that we had this here because this could move. All right, you got to remember, you're not looking for stuff verbatim. You're just looking for the puzzle pieces to get there. And if they're verbatim, that's even better. Meaning, if you specifically have what you want at that moment, that's even greater. Yes, it means it could change, but it's ensembles, remember. It's an array of models. And if we're trending in the right direction too, which we have been, let's see, let's go out. I don't like that. All right, there's the difference between 12Z and 0Z. Right? I like that. That's just 12 hours. 24 hours. So there's just good. I think it's good trending in a good direction with ensemble support and operational model support as well. And we look at 18Z AI. It's already loading. The euro comes out fast, man. It comes out fast now. I'm so happy about that. That's it's 12Z. Still 0Z, right? Man, I love this new euro coming out so fast, right? We'd be sitting here, it'd be hour 24 right now if this was the regular euro. This is going to make my life so much better. Let's expand out again. Yeah, the AI models are definitely going to be put to a test. We can look at the GFS AI too. But this was a hit as well. I kind of laid it out progressive in the 12Z, and then 18Z was a pretty good banger of a run for the 18Z Yeah, I remember. It's still far out, so yeah, I don't want to get caught up on specifics, but that's a nice snowstorm right there. That's a dime of a snowstorm for New England in the Northeast. Remember, if you guys got questions too about the specific pattern, again, it does makes it a little bit easier for me to just go through and talk about what I want to talk about. I'm going to do that anyways because I love this stuff. But if you guys got questions, relay them, and I'm more than happy to break it down. Right? And you can always catch us after too on Twitter. I leave it up and on YouTube if you like that better as well. I put timestamps in the last live stream as well. So I'm really looking to expand on YouTube as well, see if we can get more people outreach there. I think there's such a good niche for me there on YouTube to branch out for in-depth analysis. So I'm excited about that. But Twitter is my base. So we'll go from there. Well, let's look at the GraphCast. Let's look at the AI GFS. There's a storm too. GraphCast got it as well. So let's go to Euro. Just check in on what it did with 12Z or tomorrow. Just want to see if it changed at all a little bit. I want to throw out here we go. Ugh. You gotta love internet. I'm a lot of people like asking more questions on the lives for whatever reason, so it feels more inviting, I guess. So I like to leave it for those that want to. Okay. Let's see, what do we do here? Not that different. Open up here though sooner. You notice how this is a little bit more open, so it looks like this does want to try to take over sooner. Show you on the P-type map what I'm talking about. More juiced up here. And then slide this to 18 hours, right? So we go from here, a non-existent low, to 18 hours later. It's damn near off the screen, but it's a strong, we're getting into the 970s, so. Does a little bit, almost wants to consolidate. It's a little bit of a T almost. How's that compared to last run though? It's different, has the low pressure there, but all of the convection ran off. But we're more consolidated, we're wrapping it in more. So I'm curious if we continue to see that trend and we get something like the NAM, where instead of being all the way off here, we're consolidating to here. When we throw it back, then you get real interesting for flakes and snow there. But we'll let this thing ride out. We'll take a look, see what it's got in the longer. I want to get this freaking white bar off the screen if I could. Wait for this to play out here. $500 looks better than 12C. You're already out there that far? I'm only 180. Is Weather Bell faster? Different orientation of the setup, but less consolidated energy with this piece more prominent. So probably a phase between these two pieces. Over here, the confluence is pretty strong. So this will all get kind of suppressed out. And for this, and as long timing to go right, you get Snowstorm. For me right now, I'm almost just as curious about how each storm affects the next. Like we were talking about, how does each domino kind of affect the next one? This is pretty amplified here. We're just looking at the run verbatim. We may make sure our confluence holds here. What is the ad bar? Holy crap. Dumb ad off my screen, please. Well, ideally, this piece should work as a kicker to me, but I don't like our vort. I don't like our flow starting to kick up as our main vort is out here in Missouri. But let's expand out. Let's expand out here. Let's go to Continental. We're not focused too much on what the exact placement of everything is. As much fun it would be to be on stream here and get that. No, I don't want that. Here we go. There's our 50-50. Still have our block in place, but we are a little more amplified than in our southeast, more prominent as well. I prefer if this broke down here. I don't like that it's intensifying. So that's kind of the difference on that run. On this run here, you got a southeast ridge that's things a little bit more than maybe I like. This still could be a hit, maybe, I don't know, but we'll see. Still far out. Yeah, there's some more. I mean, it's 200 hours out, so I'm not really just a more amplified solution. That's really it. See, what you're doing out here in Missouri, you need to be doing here. This Southeast Ridge is a no bueno. You compare that to 12Z. See how it's like just it can sit in here more. You want your trough to be able to sit in and go deeper. It gets pretty deep still, but you get more of an angled trough versus trough that can just sit. Your trough, you want your trough base to be able to sit down into it, like you had on 12Z. But we talked about it. If we're more amplified here, what does that mean for the next one? If we're super amplified, like we are on this run, here really you just don't really get the ULL to pop out, and you kind of get convective feedback. So it will look, it ends up dust sitting. So this house, it looks a little bit, but see how it doesn't, we don't really get the upper level load really like cook up here. So it gets sheared off. So it probably doesn't look as bad as it does at 500, but solutions right now, it doesn't reach how different, right? There you go. You have a super amplified solution compared to the last run. That's really it. You have a CAD signature in place, which you can tell. And boom. I look at this and I go, Storm's still there. That's how I kind of look at it, but so now we look at this. I like to look at this. This one was super amplified, and then strong bore it here. This one's gonna move in right behind it. This one behind it might hit. The worst case scenario is you miss both. You miss both. You want to convert here on one of these. The fact we're producing something this strong is still impressive, though. Let's go to no. Well, I'll be curious to see what the EPS puts out later tonight. I'll be very curious to see. All right, you guys got questions, put them in there, or comments too. I don't mind. I'll really answer anything the best I can. It's a strong board on this run, though. It's a strong piece of energy to even come in behind this. right? So you'll have a good confluence in place for this next one. You can already see it. Good cold Arctic air to work out in front of that next one too. I'm telling you, it's not a one system watch here. It's a multi-system, and each are going to play off of each other. If one's way too amplified, the next one might be too progressive. But even if it's that, then Mid-Atlantic still gets a hit, possibly. So that's another thing. If you're in the Mid-Atlantic, you're really hoping is if you're down here, I really still think you could with a pretty deep trough base. I think you're more high ceiling event that kind of slides like this. Something like that was it 18Z GFS yesterday or today? I don't remember, but there's something where you're able to get these guys involved here, and you kind of look at that. That'd be your dream solution. But if you're in the Mid-Atlantic, you can also win by something here being or this over amplifying even more, and then this is progressive, and then you get a light to moderate snow event across. That's not true Mid-Atlantic. Then you get a light snow event, across here. Something like that. So there's multiple different ways to convert here. One thing I already like on this, all right, see, now the southeast ridge is, less present. See, our trough is kind of sitting across here. Have confluence in place. This next one comes in. It's that's still a really strong. It's a strong vort still there. I mean, if that one could, I'd be surprised if we have back-to-back interior solutions in a row. That'd make me think it's kind of an outlier run based on everything else we've seen so far, but still not going upstream here. Still flat. I don't like that the southeast ridge. Again, I'm just gonna break it down verbatim as if it was tomorrow or 10 days out. I look at all, and then how I interpret the information after is completely different. So I'm not going to be like, oh, it's 9 days out. It's a snowstorm happening. No. All right, southeast ridge holds more. So, all right, confluence in place. This one, even for such a strong amplified piece of energy that came across, this one flattens out a little bit more. It should at least look better than that one. So for people that hold on to that stuff too much. EPS doesn't roll out for a little while though too, but I love it's 1:14 a.m. and I'm getting to hour 270, and we're getting an hour 270 on the euro, so I like that. Did the AI come out yet? Come out where? Yeah, it comes out after. And then our 588 does come up still. It's more than annoying if our southeast ridge was the culprit. If we had an intensifying southeast ridge as the culprit for not converting, I would be so annoyed. That'd be so frustrating if this Euro operational run verified verbatim. Double southeast. Oh, no. What happened? Oh. More than annoying. No. There. There we go. That'd be ridiculously annoying if that was the culprit. You know, you still have your block here. It's really more so, again, Euro has been, it's part of basement, and this would force everything to be further east. So this goes out for southeast as well. No pun intended, a southeast ridge. So that's kind of the difference here is you prefer blocking. In fact, you still have it, it's just placement. Really what you would want is the GFS to be more accurate with the long range blocking. And the EPS is a little bit this EPS. We'll see if the EPS moves further east with our blocking tonight. The ensembles for the Euro. All right, this is too amplified. Sorry, you can't pull this up here too. So this would be that's the I could throw a wrench and everything is if you get it poorly placed blocking that's too far out here, and then a southeast ridge that can build in. That throws a wrench, right? So it's not a slam dunk, right? It's relaying traditional relays, a possible scenario where you get double snowstorm to go. But even then, even with all that considered, look how, because that last storm was so strong, even considering, I mean, look where our rain snow line still is. All right, so still get a cat event in place, and you still get snow, even with those factors we just talked about. So and that's still a snowstorm for a lot of interior people, and even into lower Hudson Valley and good amount of southern New England originally, right? Just verbatim for looking at that run, right? I feel like an idiot for talking about 282 hours out, but I just like highlighting the different scenarios and going over them, and right, even as bad, as bad as our south, right? It's not horrible southeast ridge here, actually. It's not horrible. It's present, but stop it. Southeast ridge, and then the local of our blocking being out here versus a little bit further east, right? That's kind of the they're looking for. We still have some blocking present up here farther north, southwest of Greenland, and we're getting cold air through the polar vortex. So the staples of the pattern remain the same. 8 to 12 days out is really not going to change. If the Euro is slightly better in the long range, doesn't make it any less inconsistent. So that's kind of all I got now. Maybe we'll go live tomorrow night again. I don't know. It seems like things went more smoothly this time, hopefully. And yeah, that just about does it. I will see you all. I appreciate everybody that came in. If you got questions, hit me up in the comments on YouTube or Twitter. And until then.